And then you make this connection to Plato in the next section of your book, and then you say something so interesting. And I would like you to say something about this, please. You said that Plato is a proto-Christian whom God used to prepare the pagan world for the coming of Christ. And this is where we have this early church father, Tertullian, whom you talk in your book, and you said earlier, who said, what has Athens to do with Jerusalem? Right. So when we compare what Tertullian said, and when you said that God used Plato as a proto-Christian to connect the pagan world with Christianity, can you please say something about Plato and his role regarding our faith?
It is amazing. That's why I wrote a whole other book called From Plato to Christ, because it's amazing how Plato seemed to foresee so much of the truth. He understood that there is a greater reality beyond ours. This world is real, but compared to the world above, it's like, to quote C.S. Lewis, we're living in the Shadowlands, right? Now, for a Christian, our world is not literally shadows, okay? But compared to the thundering reality of heaven, yeah, it is like, because, you know, I don't know if you've noticed, as Lewis points this out in Miracles, that we always have a bad habit of using negative language whenever we talk about God or heaven. So I'm corporeal and God is non-corporeal. No, God is not he's transcorporeal. I'm not personal and God's impersonal. I'm personal because God is transpersonal. The word trans has been sort of messed up lately. But God is more than, not less than. We often have this idea that heaven is like the earth with all the stuff thrown out. But heaven is more than the earth, not less than, right? It's beyond the physical. It's beyond. Our resurrection bodies will be physical, but in a physical way, we can't understand. It appeared that Jesus could walk through walls and stuff like that. You know, it's a higher, greater reality. And Plato is and to me, the proof that Plato got it right is Hebrews. Hebrews talks about how the earthly temple is literally a shadow of the throne room of God. So I think Plato got it right. I mean, the reality is in heaven. Here is a shadow. Now, again, what Plato could not understand is the idea of incarnation, right? Because the pagans are still thinking of the body as something that needs to be discarded to free the soul. But guess what, Nicola? A lot of Americans, whether they realize it or not, are dualists. They believe that the soul is good and the body's bad. And that's absolutely not true. The soul and the body are both good. They're both fallen, but they're both good. And even though one of my top 10 favorite films is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, it's a great movie, but very bad theology. We don't become angels when we die, right? We will have resurrection bodies like Christ, except ours will not have scars. So what I'm getting at is Plato. There's so many other things, but Plato is understanding the need to move beyond the shadows to seek out that which is truly true and really real. And guess what? He tells the famous allegory of the cave, how we are like people trapped in a cave, looking at shadows on a cave wall and thinking those shadows are real. But what happens if one breaks his chains and goes to the upper world and sees what the world is really like? And what if that man went back into the cave to try to open the eyes of his fellow prisoners? What would they do? They would hang him and kill him. Now, Plato partly had in mind his teacher, Socrates, who was killed. But it reads like a prophecy of Christ coming into the world. And, you know, early church fathers noticed that, right? By the way, most of the early apologists like Justin Martyr and Hippolytus and Aristides, people who defended the faith. I've got a new book called Ancient Voices, an Insider's Look at the Early Church, that looks at some of these folks. And what's amazing is that these early martyrs, speaking before pagans, I mean emperors like Trajan and Hadrian and Marcus Aurelius, they compared themselves to Socrates because they said Socrates was the first martyr for monotheism. Now, he didn't know Yahweh, he didn't have the Bible, but he is moving, if you read him, towards one God. If there is a God, he must be the standard of goodness, truth, and beauty. So he's moving towards that, and he's put to death for it. So they actually recognize themselves in the tradition of Socrates and therefore also Plato as well. There were truths that they can learn. And again, Plato went as far as a person could go on the basis of general revelation. That is one of the reasons Dante chose Virgil, a pagan who died 20 years before Christ was born, chose him to be his guide through the universe, because Virgil represented the farthest that human reason can go on the basis of general revelation. And that's why at the end of the journey, Beatrice, who represents divine grace, has to take him the rest of the way. But Virgil is able to take him a good portion of the way because he made full use of the general revelation that was given us from the beginning, because we are still in the image of God.